How's it
How's it
going?
going? Welcome to another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm your host, Jess Monet, and let me know if you can hear me. I had some technical difficulties as I was trying to log on today, so I just want to make sure that the audio is good, my Wi-Fi is actually working, so on and so forth. Hey, JB, how's it going? So it's gonna be a super quick show again today. I think there's an echo. I don't know. I don't even know what to do about it anymore. Hold on, let me try this. Quick fix. Is that better? Um, but yeah, pretty much any show I do on a Wednesday is gonna end up being a relatively quick show just because of my schedule. Like I want to be consistent, but there's only so many hours in a day, and I still have a full-time job. So super quick show. Gonna go over some real quick shout outs and call outs and then talk about what I guess you could consider the news of the day. The Cowboys have started conducting formal and informal interviews at the combine. And there hasn't been as much talk about that so far as I thought there would be. A little bit of commentary, but maybe like starting tomorrow morning, we'll start to hear more news and analysis and commentary about it. But for now, we're going to hop into my shout outs and call outs. Jamie said, I just knew it wasn't the light. Y'all will not leave me alone about the light. With it being a quick show, and technically the light is not acting right, but if you haven't noticed, I'm not going to say anything. But with it being a quick show, hopefully the light will last the show. What the fuck are my neighbors doing? Jesus. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but it's some craziness going on. Anyway, my first shout out is a continuation of some of the shout outs and call outs that I did yesterday. So, yesterday we talked about some of the entries into the Big Data Bowl, basically, this analytics competition that the NFL holds in conjunction with Amazon and AWS. And we talked about the finalists, and we also talked about the theme for this year and what's going to happen with the finalists at the combine in terms of the money that they could win, so on and so forth. And so it seems that the theme for this year is very defensive oriented. So they actually asked a lot of the entries to do projects based on tackling. And so these could be in an undergraduate category, a metrics category, or a coaching category. So in other words, they could do like an introductory type of application, basically saying, hey, here's an application that could work for various things. Or they might do something that's strictly for calculating a metric or something that coaches could use to evaluate players or make decisions, so on and so forth. And so yesterday we talked about some of the finalists, and a couple of the ones that we really liked were the ones that analyzed things like the importance of setting the edge, and also one of the ones that looked at tackle contributions. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to look at the runners up and the honorable mention projects and see if there are any that I like. And there were actually a few. What I can say from what I'm seeing in terms of tendencies is that if any of this gets used anytime in the near future, and if the theme for this year's Big Data Bowl is any indication of the interests of the NFL, we're going to see a lot more analytics on the defensive side of the ball. I know for a lot of people, we've started looking at analytics as very much an offensively oriented thing. It determines what plays to call them, when to go for it, when not to go for it, when you should go for two, stuff like that. And we really haven't seen it applied to the defensive side of the ball that much. But it seems like the NFL is like, okay, how can we get this on both sides? How can we make this a defensive thing too? Which sounds a little bit counterintuitive just because a lot of people would think like, well, the offense will use the analytics, they'll make decisions, and the defense will just have to respond to it. But based on the developments in some of these projects, it really does seem like there's going to be a lot of room for defenses to actually make decisions and force offenses to respond to them. And so I went through like 12 projects, and I think there's like only one that I was really, really interested in. And it's an application called Predator. I'm not a big fan of the name, but essentially it's an application that would judge how efficient defenders are when it comes to stopping a ball carrier. So have you ever been watching a game and you see someone on the defense going after someone on the offense, and you think to yourself, man, they could have really got that guy on the ground quicker had they gone this way instead of taking the long way, something like that? Essentially, that's what this project is supposed to do. And so it just analyzes game footage. So it's like an after the fact type thing that you can take information from and use it to make decisions for like in the future. But basically, it's analysis of defenders' tendencies to show who's inefficient, who's efficient, and help them make changes in the path that they take to a ball carrier. And then they also quantify it. So if you were to start seeing these metrics in like a list of stats, for example, you might see a metric that says, okay, this defender, they might get a lot of tackles, but they're actually really inefficient. If they would actually improve their efficiency, they could actually help minimize the yards accrued by the offense. So I thought that was really interesting. And it seems like a lot of the projects that are coming out on that side of the ball could determine things like what personnel is out on the field at various times. Um, if teams use it right, we'll see a lot more teams setting the edge a lot more just because reading the analysis and conclusions for a lot of these projects, they really do have a lot of statistical support for like, hey, a lot of teams, as much as we see it, are not even setting the edge as often or as efficiently as they could be. So, shout out to the NFL and the Big Data Bowl and the projects and metrics and analytics that could come out of that. Should be interesting. My next shout out goes to Nicole Hardman, just because this soundbite from the pivot with him talking about the Jets. When people talk about the Cowboys and they talk about the culture issues, sometimes, and I mean, we know the Cowboys are not a bad team, but sometimes they talk about them as though the issues are insurmountable and there's no hope for the Cowboys until they change everything about how they're operating internally. When I heard Hardman talk about what he experienced with the Jets, I was just like, oh my God. Like, and of course, I'm assuming that this is not the same thing that the Cowboys are doing because we heard Micah Parsons say some things that suggest that, there might be a little bit more room for discipline and accountability. But I just want y'all to listen to this clip real quick and let me know what y'all think when it comes to how people should maybe talk about other teams if they weren't so focused on the Dallas Cowboys.
To Fred's point, what went wrong with the Jets? Like, I was surprised when you went back. I was surprised,
Right?
Because I'm like, we saw you ball, like we saw you go to Super Bowls, you know what I'm saying? And then you go to the Jets, and then they trade you. What went wrong there?
I just feel like it wasn't. We were on the same page. Like, and I ain't trying to bash nobody like that, but it's like y'all treat certain guys that shouldn't be treated like they should be treated, and it's like I don't understand where y'all feel like that I don't compare or I can't compete with any of these guys that y'all playing in front of me. You know what I mean? And I just feel like it's not an established coaching staff there as well. Like, you just got a new coaching staff that came in, and like it's no standard there. It's like everybody do what they want to do, and it's like whatever. Now, granted, the defense have a more of a stabilized standard with the coaching staff on that side. So you could tell the defense got a standard, but the offense is just like, all right, we'll just figure it out. It's Aaron show. Let Aaron do what Aaron do, you know what I mean? But then when Aaron go down, it's like, we don't know what to do. But this is that same coach that just was out of a job the previous year that averaged get a new job. Yeah. So I just feel like it follows or see what's going on. Like meetings, because this my thing was, y'all can't tell me about winning. I've been to 4 Super Bowls in 5 years, you know what I'm saying, now, you feel me? But beforehand, I've been to 4 AFC championships, I've been to 3 Super Bowls, I've won 2 of them. Like, I know what winning looks like.
Right.
I know what winning is. So y'all keep telling me certain things, it's like, I'm not going for that. Like, because y'all not doing it right. Like, we got hammers on the ground, we don't got no discipline, people feel like it's too many individual egos in this locker room or whatever, and I'm telling them, like, this not going to get y'all to win. It's not going to happen. Because you step in KC locker room, it's Pat, it's me, it's Trav, it's Nick Allegretti, it's Noah Drake. We all on the same level. Nobody's treated differently. If Coach Reed say we don't wear yellow cleats in practice, if Pat go out there and wear yellow cleats, Pat go back inside and change his cleats. Everybody treated the same. So it's like when we was out there, there was no really structure was going on. And obviously it's new coaches and stuff like that. But I'm trying to help y'all out. But y'all like, oh, whatever, like, and then y'all telling me certain things like, I meet with you and you like, yeah, I'm gonna get you some plays. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you get involved in the game plan, but I play 2 plays. That's not, you can't tell me that. I'd rather you tell me I feel like these guys better than you and we'll figure you out later. I bet I can.
So yeah, I really liked how he started off that statement with, "I'm not trying to bash nobody," and then proceeds to say, like, "Yeah, your coaching staff sucks. There's no structure. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to win. There's no discipline. There's no sort of logistical hierarchy." And it's like, are you sure you're not trying to bash anybody? But I want to contrast that with what he said about the Chiefs. And I'm not going to go deep into it because we talked about it yesterday, the comments that Stephen Jones made about the Cowboys. But he basically contrasts his experiences with the two teams as saying, like, hey, yeah, what y'all saw in the field obviously was like there was a big difference. But, you know, based on my experience, the difference that you saw on the field can actually be traced back to things that were happening during practices, things that happened before we got on the field, things that were happening or weren't happening in the locker room and during meetings. And so, and I might just discuss this later on in the week because it still seems to be a relevant topic for a lot of people. But one of the discussions that's happening now in light of Stephen Jones' comments is that there's this conversation about, is it culture or would winning really solve quote unquote the cultural issues? Like, in other words, is there really a cultural issue, or are people pointing to that because of the lack of results on the field, the lack of results in the postseason? And so there's definitely a group of fans, a group of Cowboys fans in particular, who are saying, hey, if we fix the personnel issues, if we perform better on the field, there's really nothing to think about in terms of culture for real. But I hear players themselves more and more when they're asked, hey, what was the difference between your experience on this team versus that one? Or what do you think it was that really, you know, made this winning team a winning team? And they might bring up the talent and skills of some of the players. They might bring up some of the things that were enforced by coaches or some of the things that were called by coaches. But I feel like more and more we're hearing a lot of these players just be like, hey, this is how the locker room was. This is how the coaches ran things. And you can't win like that. And we're hearing this from players who have been with multiple teams. We're hearing this from players who have experience winning. We're hearing this from players who have spent years in the league, sometimes from players who have retired. So I think it's an interesting conversation that might take more of the spotlight as we get into the regular season. But I just thought that soundbite was really interesting and also kind of funny. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna be like, I'm not trying to bash anybody, but y'all are kind of full of shit. I guess you can say whatever you want as long as you preface it with, I'm not trying to bash anybody. Okay. The last shout out that I want to get into before we go into the headline of the day is this situation with, I don't know if y'all have heard about it, Chiefsaholic, who is apparently a Kansas City Chiefs super fan. I didn't hear about this situation until I heard about the statement the lawyer made for this guy today. But I'm going to read y'all a little bit of an article that came out in USA Today about Chiefsaholic, and then I'm going to show y'all the clip from this lawyer because I had no idea what this situation was before I watched it. And as I thought if I listened to the statement from the attorney, I would get an idea of what was going on. And honestly, it confused me more than anything. So this article says the infamous Kansas City Chiefs superfan Chiefsaholic pleaded guilty in federal court Wednesday to charges related to a string of bank robberies in 7 states, and he could face up to 50 years in prison. He was known to don a werewolf costume at Chiefs games and had a large social media presence among fans, and he admitted to stealing more than $800,000 from bank robberies throughout the Midwest in recent years, and then used the stolen money to place bets on Chiefs games. This is wild. The 29-year-old pled guilty to 1 count of money laundering, 1 count of transporting stolen property across state lines, and 1 count of bank robbery. He faces a prison sentence of up to 50 years without parole. His sentencing is scheduled for July 10th. So I'm going to show you all the picture of this guy because, like, when I saw it, I was like, yeah, I've seen him on broadcast, you know? I was like, I actually recognize him. I didn't know it was, like, one guy who was a super fan, but I recognized him once I saw him. So this guy, This guy in the picture, that's the guy who's apparently 29 years old and has spent the past several years robbing banks and going to Chiefs games and betting on the Chiefs games. And so his lawyer who was defending him decided to make a plea to the fans of the Chiefs and to the Kansas City community to, I guess, give him empathy or show him leniency or grace. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna just let y'all hear it. And I feel like this is, depending on how you feel, this is either the best or the worst attorney statement that you might ever hear, honestly. Wait, why is it not playing? Give me 1 second, guys. I'm gonna try to find another. Okay, let's try this. No, it's not playing. Hold on, I'm gonna put on another copy of the video. And in the meantime, I'm gonna respond to some of y'all's questions. Oscar said, I heard something today that Quinn went off script. Did you hear it? No, I did not. In the playoff game? Oh, I mean, I've heard different things regarding that sound more like conspiracy theories than anything, if I'm being honest. And so I don't know what rumor you're specifically referring to, but I have heard a few people suggest that Dan Quinn like threw the game or sabotaged it in some way. I don't know anything about it. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna change the volume controls on here, and I just want to make sure it doesn't create some crazy audio issue. Okay. Let me know if y'all are hearing like a really bad echo or anything like that. And I'm gonna try this again. But yeah, if that's what you're referring to, it came from Stephen Jones. Where did you hear this, Oscar? I only have so many hours in a day. I'm bound to miss something. Okay, let's see if this works. Did y'all hear the YouTube video that I played a second ago? Because I heard it, but I'm not hearing this for some reason. Let me see if I can find it on YouTube. And if not, then I guess we just won't get to hear what his attorney had to say. Oscar, what exactly did Stephen Jones say? If it's short enough to put into a quote. All right, I'm gonna try this YouTube video, and then if it doesn't work, we're just gonna move on to the next thing.
Good morning, everybody. Today was a big day for Xavier Babidar. From the beginning of this case, folks, the government has been blitzing, and Xavier's pocket was collapsing. But today, Xavier stepped into the pressure. He took responsibility for his actions. He stood up in court, humble and repentant.
So Xavier is the Chiefsaholic guy. And so he's like, yeah, from the beginning of this, the government has been blitzing and Xavier's pocket has been collapsing. And today he stepped up in the pocket. And I'm like, you mean he pled guilty to bank robbery?
Admitted what he had done. Now, if I know anything about Xavier, and if the Chiefs Kingdom knows anything about Chiefsaholic, we know that he doesn't give up. We know that if he stumbled and he fell, he didn't let his knee touch the ground. And that's because he's capable of doing a great thing. And he knows that there's still hope. We still have a lot of work to do on his case, but Xavier wants everyone to know that he loves the Chiefs Kingdom, he loves Kansas City, and he hopes that you'll rally to his support. Thank you and God bless.
So the football analogies in there, hold on. The football analogies in there just kind of cracked me up. I was like, is he really using football analogies to try to defend a bank robber and to try to get sympathy from the people who he robbed? Now, I don't know what's going to happen in that case. Like I said, the sentencing is happening on July 10th. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But I don't know. There's a lot of interesting quotes coming out of the sports world today. And Oscar, while we were listening to that, I was looking for the information about Stephen Jones talking about Dan Quinn, and I did not see it. So no, I don't know anything about Stephen Jones saying anything about Dan Quinn going off script. Now, I'll say this, it wouldn't really surprise me. It seems like, oh, JV just posted something. Let me see what you have to say. JV said, Stephen Jones talked about the players we had and the use of the players that we had. He stated that he didn't know the actual plan for the players DQ wanted. Okay, I might have to look that up. I'll either come back again live tonight or tomorrow and we'll talk about that. Because that's not necessarily an admission of the discovery of sabotage so much as it's an admission that he didn't know what was going on. So I would definitely want to hear more. But if Stephen Jones did say something implicating Dan Quinn, that wouldn't really surprise me. It seems like lately Stephen Jones hasn't really been holding back whenever it comes to saying things that would cause people to question what's happening inside the building or just doubt the ability of the Cowboys to fix whatever is happening. Everything from suggesting that, Jerry Jones isn't going to change anything by saying, oh, Jerry's always is all in, to kind of undermining what Micah Parsons said about the culture. And now this, I don't know if he intends to put his foot in his mouth like this or intends to throw people under the bus this way, but it seems to be his MO at the combine. So, hey, this would just be par for the course like everything else. But yeah, is that something that came out today, JV? Because I don't remember hearing that quote yesterday. But if it came out today, I'll look into it. What I did find today, and this will be the last thing that we talk about before I get off of here and go to work. Good times. What I did hear about today was about the interviews that are being held by the Dallas Cowboys. So I'll pull up this picture. If you're not following Nick Harris, you should definitely follow him. It sounds like he's boots on the ground at the combine and reporting on everything that impacts the Dallas Cowboys. And today he posted this list of the formal and informal interviews that have been conducted so far with certain players at the combine. So I'll go ahead and share my screen so y'all can see the list. JV said it was yesterday, believe it or not. That was one I missed. I saw the Stephen Jones video about Jerry always going all in. I saw the Stephen Jones video where he talked about the fact that he didn't believe there were any cultural issues. I did not see this thing where he talked about Dan Quinn. I saw a few videos of Dan Quinn, and we talked about some of those yesterday, but I didn't see this one in particular. Anyway, Nick Harris said, here's the full list of guys I caught up with today that said they interviewed with the Dallas Cowboys this week. DTs and LBs today, DBs and TEs tomorrow, QBs and RBs and WRs on Friday, O-line on Saturday. So That's what this list is. That's why it's all DTs and LBs. I think when people first saw it without like reading the description that went with it, a lot of people assumed that it meant that the Cowboys were, definitely keyed in on a defensive player, but it just so happens that that's who they had access to today. So the way formal and informal interviews work at the Combine is teams have a cap on the number of formal interviews that they can conduct and also how long those interviews can be. And it's changed over the years, but I think right now I want to say it's 45 interviews that can be no longer than 18 minutes. And if it's not 18 minutes, it's like 15. And so teams will submit who they want to interview, and the NFL will basically schedule times for everybody based on who the teams say they want to talk to. So that limit on the players that are submitted to the NFL really just makes it so that the teams will really put effort into only interviewing players that they're actually interested in. And also, obviously, it limits the player schedules from being way too crowded, because you might have teams who, and this still happens anyway, well, they'll interview people that they're not necessarily interested in, but just curious about talking to. Or they'll use an interview opportunity to, I don't know, persuade a player to say something or do something that increases the odds of them falling in the draft or something like that. So that's why there are fewer formal interviews than informal ones, because basically all the informal interviews happen at a separate location, and it's basically all the players show up and they're available. Coaches or small groups of coaches will go and they'll talk to players as they're available at that location. So from what I understand, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's less formal. They're not really sitting down and having it is a one-on-one conversation, but it's not in a set apart location like it is. This is more like everybody's in one place, and then you kind of find who you're looking for and you do the interview that way. Hold on, we're going back and forth between topics because I want to see what JV said now. JV said, now that I think about it, it may have been a couple days ago. Yesterday, I went to a funeral. Oh, I'm sorry. My condolences. So my information was already late because I was out the loop. And Oscar said, on the show, Dak Attack, and on Micah's show, he also said he only played plays that were called. And even Greg Olson and Rex Ryan questioned the play calling. Well, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of people have questioned the play calling. And that I've heard about. I've heard a lot of people suggest that the play calling was questionable at best. And then there have been some people who have come out and said that they believe that Dan Quinn sabotaged the game. What I have not heard is any admission by Dan Quinn that he did that. I haven't heard any of the officials for the Cowboys, like any of the leadership or any coaches, say that they thought that or that they had any sort of confirmation that actually happened. So that's what I'm talking about. The idea floating out there, yes, I've heard that. I've heard that a lot. But Stephen Jones confirming it, that's something that I haven't heard, and that is a completely different story. Anyway, going back to this list of players that have been interviewed, the formal interviews, especially considering who is available today, none of it is surprising. Now, when I put out my question for what y'all wanted to talk about today, Clement was like, talk about who the Cowboys should draft. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still getting the hang of this whole draft thing, and it's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, but it takes a lot of time. And if the Cowboys were like a crappy team who had an early draft pick, and it was kind of obvious, like it is with some of the teams that do have early draft picks, that like, yeah, the Cowboys really need a quarterback, or the Cowboys really need XYZ skill player, it would be a little bit easier to evaluate things. But in my opinion, there are a few different positions that I would be okay with the Cowboys going with to start off. And I think the linebacker situation is a very dire situation right now for a couple of reasons. But I would also be okay with the Cowboys picking up an offensive lineman, picking up a center, picking up a defensive tackle early. Like any of those positions, I'd be comfortable with. But when it comes to who I'm like, okay, the Cowboys better get this situation figured out quickly, definitely linebackers. So, but beyond that, I'm not your mock draft person. I'm not your film breakdown person. Maybe one day. I have enjoyed watching film and I have enjoyed learning about all these players, but I'm just not at that point that a lot of people are, where it's like, yes, I've watched 100+ players. I can pull up footage and tell you names and all that. No. One thing I will say about this list, though, is that while a lot of the names make sense, there was one name that I was kind of surprised I didn't see on this list, and that is Peyton Wilson. And the reason why I was surprised about not seeing that name is because, one, he's one that seems to be floating around among a lot of Cowboys fans. And two, whenever we think about what the Cowboys really need, not only physically, but in terms of football IQ, in terms of like intellectual abilities, I feel like Peyton Wilson is one of the best fits in terms of getting the best of both worlds. Someone who knows the game and who can bring a little bit of an intellectual component, and who also, handles his business when it comes time for gameplay. And the reason why I mention that is because the green dot situation this past season is JV, why do you say no more injury prone draft picks? Are you one of those people who thinks that Wilson is injury prone, even though he hasn't had an injury in a while? He did have some pretty bad injuries, like 2 ACL tears is kind of a big deal, but I think I would make a big deal about it if it happened like this past season. I might be like, whoa, like stay away from that guy. But I believe they happened in 2020, or at least the last one happened in 2020. He was out for most of 2021, and since then he's been all right. In 2023, he was he won the Butt Kiss Award. He's won several awards. As a matter of fact, let me pull up his wiki and I can tell you about some of the things he's accomplished. And honestly, although, like I said, I'm not the footage person, but from watching him and then reading what some people said were his weaknesses, it really didn't align for me. I feel like his weaknesses maybe are exaggerated because he's had injuries, and for whatever reason, that's the image that is sticking in people's heads. So he won the Chuck Bednarik Award. He won the Butt Kiss Award in 2023. He was a unanimous All-American in 2023. He was ACC Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. And he was two-time first team All-ACC in both 2020 and 2023. So yes, he has had a couple of injuries. They were bad. But the most recent information that we have on him is that he's a high-performing, award-winning linebacker who is also very smart when it comes to his approach to the game. So going back to why I think that's important, we didn't talk a lot about the green dot situation with the Dallas Cowboys this past year, but it's something that's come up in the past, and I don't think the issue was completely solved. I think they found somebody to do it, but I don't think it was handled in the most effective way. And especially in light of some of the questions we have about play calling, especially in that playoff game, it kind of makes me wonder if that impacted the defense at any point. Because LVE did it whenever he was active on the field, right? And according to reports, he was really good at it. Although the people who didn't really like LVE as a linebacker, a lot of times, what did they say? Oh, he's hesitant, he's not aggressive enough, so on and so forth. Coincidentally, that was a little bit of what we saw from Micah Parsons when they tried to give him the green dot, which suggests to me that having the green dot requires so much mental energy from a player that maybe it's hard for them to simply act on instinct and be as aggressive as they like to be, because they're having to monitor so many things that are happening on the field, right? And this past season, it was given to Jaron Curse most of the time. There were, of course, times where Jaron Curse wasn't available. And I think there might have been a couple of times that it switched around for other reasons. But most of the time, it was with Jaron Curse. And what we never heard about Jaron Curse was that he's like the intellectual guy, that he's like the football IQ guy, that he's the let me organize everybody on defense guy. And so I really do think, quiet as it's kept, the Dallas Cowboys need a linebacker who not only is skilled, who not only is high performing, but who also has enough of a football IQ and enough of an intellectual approach to the game to where maybe they could take over that green dot position. Because it sounds like it's an important position. And it sounds like the Cowboys have had trouble finding someone to fill it competently. And it sounds like having someone to fill that role competently is something that definitely affects the operation of the entire rest of the defense. And so that might be a question that I pose to, one of my other friends who actually like really does this draft shit for real. But there's a group of people, I'm gonna say, that I talk to about draft stuff. And we've basically been trying to get the hang of talking about the draft together. And I remember like 2 weeks ago when we were talking about linebackers, Peyton Wilson was one of the names that we brought up. And we were like, yes, he would be a great fit. He has everything that we need in a linebacker. Boom. And so when I saw this list and I saw that he wasn't on it, I was just like, why? Is it maybe that they don't expect him to be available? I don't know. I can't imagine them just being like, oh, he's not a good fit. Like, what? So I don't know. But obviously, interviews are not over. And then this is also a list that's coming from Nick Harris's. It's a list of people he was able to catch up with. So maybe it's not the complete list. I don't know. But yeah, a few of these other names on the list would also be good fits, especially whenever you think about some of the things that Mike Zimmer said he wanted in his defensive players. So the size of guys like McKinley Jackson, Devondre Sweat would definitely be appealing. And then, of course, who doesn't speak glowingly about Edgerrin Cooper? So overall, I'm okay with the list. I don't have a problem with it. I've seen people kind of go back and forth. There are some people like this comment right here that says, what's your take on the fact that there are no offensive skill positions on the list? Well, the week's not over. Especially when it comes to the informal interviews, certain players are made available on certain days. And Nick actually says it right here in his description of this tweet that the offensive players are gonna be talked to on Friday and Saturday. So that part I wouldn't worry too much about. And when it comes to, I think somebody else brought up the lack of first round grades. I wouldn't worry about that either, just because the Cowboys are picking so low in the first round. I kind of expect them to look at a lot of people who are available later. So I'm not worried about anything from either of those aspects, but I did want to show y'all the list. Like I said, I am not the draft person. I'm working on becoming that. So I don't have like full film breakdowns on everybody, but like those are my initial thoughts upon looking at the list. Now, what I will say is as the combine goes on, I do kind of want to see how those lists how those lists develop, and see if Nick Harris adds to the list to see who comes up on the other days. And I think that'll give us a more complete picture of what the Cowboys are doing at the combine than going off a limited list from basically their first day of doing interviews. JV said, although I'm all for Edgerrin Cooper in the first, but is he a true first? At that position, I would say he's as close as anybody. Like I'm going in my mind and thinking of all like the lists that I've seen and the mock drafts that I have seen, and I can't really think of anybody who doesn't have him as like their top. Usually he's a top, but I very rarely see him like not the top one or two linebackers listed. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, or if I'm even the person to answer your question. Peyton would cost a first round pick, whereas Junior Colson would cost a third. Can't argue with you there. That could very well be the reason that they didn't interview him. Maybe they really don't anticipate getting him. I'm not sure. I would have just felt better had they at least talked to him personally. You said Edgerrin Cooper is your top LB. The group that I was talking to, we discussed Edgerrin Cooper and Peyton Wilson. And I'm definitely one of those people who tends to look into the minutia of things. And so that's why I really keyed in on Peyton Wilson and him having that intellectual component to his game. But I'm not mad at anybody who is all for Edgerrin Cooper. And then you said that would leave the first to a center if Junior Colson costs a third. I wouldn't really be mad at drafting a center in the first round because while the linebacker position is important, super important, right? I do think it's harder to find a good center right now than it is to find a good linebacker. So if they do end up taking a center in the first round, especially if it's one who they're confident can play the center position, as opposed to what the Cowboys have now, which is a couple of people that we kind of hope can play the center position. If they find somebody that they're confident in and they're available in the first round, by all means, I feel like they should make that move. Because right now, when it comes to linebacker, there's free agent moves that can be made, there's draft moves that can be made. There's a little bit more room when it comes to later rounds in the draft to still get somebody who's good, even if they're not the absolute best linebacker in the entire draft, right? I feel like it's harder to say that about the center position. Mike Harris said they're either going to get a center or bring Tyler back. That's interesting. I think most everybody I've heard are like making it a foregone conclusion that Tyler's gone. So if that happens, that would definitely be interesting. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I have no idea what this front office is gonna do. They are very unpredictable, and especially with bringing in somebody new on the defense and Mike McCarthy having a lame duck season and still for some reason not going to the combine. JV said, "Do you really want Bigadish back?" I'm so mad that people are still calling him Bigadish. Oh my god. Man. Biotish, in case people have forgotten his name. Tyler Biotish, do I want him back? I'm not anxious about having him back. No, I would rather see the Cowboys draft somebody, honestly. But if for some reason they can't, I guess, I don't know. Y'all are kind of depressing me now. In my mind, it was a foregone conclusion that Biotish was out of here and that they would draft this awesome ass center, and then like we could just move forward from there. And now y'all are like, well, Biotish might come back, and I'm just like, I don't want to think about that. JV said, I know that in 2021 he allowed 0 sacks. Yeah, it's not 2021 anymore. Just like we don't have 2021 Tyler Biotish, Peyton Wilson is also not in 2021. So let's leave 2021 where it is. We're going to look at what happened in 2023 and what we can do with that information in terms of making good decisions moving forward. So no, I if I had things my way, no, I don't want Biotish back. And I do think that while the linebacker situation is a bigger emergency in terms of its, well, no, I don't even want to say it's a big emergency in terms of its impact on the game. I think the impact of not having really solid linebackers right now is just a little bit more obvious. My hair is a mess, y'all. I'm about to go to work. I think the impact of not having really good linebackers right now is just a little bit more obvious. It stands out a little bit more. It's been discussed a lot more, especially since a lot of people thought just different decisions could have been made at the position, whereas what was happening at center kind of was what it was, and there weren't really a lot of other good options for the Cowboys. So I think the linebacker decision or the linebacker situation just got discussed more. I can honestly say that I think it's a bigger emergency in the sense that we literally have nobody, or I should say we have like one person, where at least at center we have a couple of people who could possibly put up a good showing, especially, once we go through OTAs and training camp and they know that they're the one. Who knows how they might step up and how they might develop, right? But I think just because of the scarcity of good centers, that's what's making me say, yeah, let's make that a priority. And then we always have more options and different options when it comes to linebacker. So that's how I feel. But now that I know y'all want to hear so much about the draft, not that I didn't know y'all wanted to hear about it, but like there's so many other people who I know y'all watch because I have YouTube analytics and they tell me who my audience watches, and y'all watch some other people who deliver some really good draft information. And so honestly, that was the last thing I was expecting y'all to say y'all wanted to hear from me when I was like, what do y'all want to talk about today? I was like, they're not going to come to me for draft shit. But what I'll do is I will put some of my newfound draft skills to work and I will bring some takes for you guys. Like I said, I'm not going to be mock draft person. I'm not going to be a film breakdown person, but I do like watching the film. I do like reading about these players. And so if I feel like there's something that I can add to the conversation, kind of along the lines of this whole green dot situation that I haven't heard many people bring up when it comes to linebacker, if I feel like there's something I can add to the conversation, I will definitely add to the conversation. So now that I know y'all are looking for that kind of information, I will make more of an attempt to deliver it for you all. Otherwise, we'll definitely talk more about some of the quotes coming out of the combine, especially from Stephen Jones. We'll talk more about who it seems like the Cowboys are looking at and what they do with the combine, because all these guys that they've interviewed, we haven't actually seen them do anything at the combine yet, right? So that's another thing. So we'll talk about all that. And if this whole situation with the comments about the Cowboys culture and the leadership of the Cowboys remains relevant, we'll dive a little bit more into that as well, especially with it being that some coaches have been hired. And I think it would be really fun to cross-reference some of the statements that Stephen Jones is making with some of the hires that have been made, and just see if we can predict some changes in terms of culture, as well as the changes that people are discussing in terms of what we should see on the field from the Dallas Cowboys. And then, of course, any other relevant sports news I will bring to y'all. So tomorrow night, I plan on going live again. It'll probably just be like way later in the evening. So I'm talking, when do I get off work? It could very well be like 10 o'clock, 10:30 p.m. Central when I go live tomorrow. But I've done it before and y'all showed up and we had a good time. So we might do it again and see how it goes. So if you want to pop in and chat with me, I might even see if I can like take calls or have y'all come into StreamYard and ask me questions. So it should be a good time. But that's all I have for today. Like I said, short show. And I'm going to head out of here. So thanks everybody for tuning in and participating in the chat. Hey, Al, thanks for popping in. Hey, Matrix, thanks for popping in. Thanks for being here the whole time, JV. And I hope to see you tomorrow. This has been another... Hold on, let me see what Al said real quick. I'm into the draft and combine, but I think Dallas should look at how effective they can make their backfield defense. Okay, that's legit. I'm going to put a pin in that because I really do have to go. But this has been another episode of Bitches Love Sports. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jazz Monet, and I'm out.